If you voted for Sniffy Joe and Cackling Kamala, here's why I call you blithering idiots. Most people will vote for people who represent traits they like. Or traits they have, basically birds of a feather. So when I call you blithering idiots, don't be offended, I'm going on the evidence I have. You elected blithering idiots to represent you. So naturally, I assume, since the birds of a feather analogy, you're a blithering idiot, like them. Just like, if you voted for Hillary, I won't do business with you, because you wanted a corrupt, lying piece of garbage representing you. I'm going to assume you're a lying, corrupt piece of garbage. Imagine being Fetterman's and Biden's sign language interpreter at the same time. Fetterman, the Eagles are better than the Eagles. Biden, you're right, and hubcap, vanilla, truck, bus stop, I think I shit myself. Sniffy Joe lie number 1. Nobody making under $400,000 will have their taxes raised. Period. This one was reminiscent of the infamous George H.W. Bush claim in 1988, read my lips, no new taxes. Biden didn't say he wouldn't raise taxes on the middle class once or twice, but routinely throughout the campaign, and he even still says it. Except that inflation is a tax that hits the middle class and the poor hardest, and over the past year, prices have outpaced wages and salaries by roughly 4 percentage points. With the average worker wage and salary at roughly $60,000 per year, that's a lot less than $400,000. This means a $2,400 per worker Biden inflation tax, and as much as double that for families with husband and wife both working. Sniffy Joe lie number 2. Inflation is worse everywhere but here. Biden claimed this most recently in a speech in Philadelphia as an excuse for high inflation here at home. It's a lie. Inflation is lower in Australia, Canada, China, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, Switzerland, the United Kingdom, and many other countries. Sniffy Joe lie number 3. The economy had stalled when I entered office. The economy was stagnant. The reality is that Biden was bequeathed an economy with robust growth coming out of the pandemic. In the second half of 2020, the economy grew more than $1.5 trillion at an annualized rate. The growth rate for the second half of 2020, even with COVID, was almost 15%. Moreover, when Biden entered office, the economy was prepped for an enormous tailwinds gust because of the Trump Operation Warp Speed vaccine that was just hitting the market and allowing businesses to reopen and workers to return to the job. Sniffy Joe lie number 4. I am responsible for the strongest job creation economy in modern times. This is more an exaggeration than a bold-faced lie. On jobs, we will give the president his due. This has been an impressive hiring spree over the past 14 months, and the jobs are out there for those who want them. But this is not the strongest period for job creation. That hiring record was set in 2020 under Trump, who presided over the initial recovery following the government-imposed lockdowns. Job growth under Trump from May 2020 to January 2021 averaged 1.4 million jobs per month, for a total of 12.5 million people returning to work. But under Biden, average job growth per month has been cut by more than half, down to 542,000, with 8.7 million people returning to work. That means Biden has added 31% fewer jobs in 16 months than Trump did in 9. Sniffy Joe lie number 5. Since I took office, families are carrying less debt, their average savings are up. This is a strange and often repeated White House claim. The amount families are able to save each month has utterly collapsed, falling 74% since Biden took office, while the personal savings rate has plummeted from 19.9% to just 5.4%. Likewise, the claim about declining debt is equally untrue. Household debt has risen by $1.29 trillion in just the first 15 months of Biden's presidency. Credit card debt, which decreased over $100 billion during the pandemic, is now exploding at the fastest rates on record as families run out of savings and fall into debt. Put simply, they cannot afford to live in Biden's America. Biden also ignores a stock market sell-off that has evaporated some $10 trillion of Americans' wealth and savings. This is one of the greatest periods of savings disappearing. Sniffy Joe lie number 6. I'm doing everything I can to lower gas prices. Which is a strange claim by Sniffy Joe, because every time I bring up gas prices, the loony left says the president has nothing to do with gas prices. I'm sure if they were at record lows, Sniffy Joe would have everything to do with gas prices. We wonder if anyone actually believes this claim. The folks at Institute for Energy Research have identified 100 separate Biden executive orders, regulations, and laws that have impeded oil and gas production and raised prices at the pump. These range from killing pipelines, to expanding EPA regulations on oil and gas drilling and refining, to taking hundreds of thousands of acres of prime oil and gas lands on public lands and in areas like the Gulf of Mexico off limits for drilling. Economist Casey Mulligan of the University of Chicago estimates that these policies have reduced oil and gas drilling by 2 to 3 million barrels a day. That increased production would bring gas prices down at the pump. Sniffy Joe lie number 7. Used the promise of student loan forgiveness to buy votes, knowing it was unconstitutional. Nancy Pelosi even told him as much.
No. Well, thank you for your question. It's so refreshing to get a question on substance and process, but not responding to whatever. Here's the thing. People think that the President of the United States, is this more on the subject than you ever want to know? Well, you'll let me know. People think that the President of the United States has the power for debt forgiveness. He does not. He can postpone, he can delay, but he does not have that power. That has to be an act of Congress.
Sniffy Joe lie number 8. The vaccine will stop the transmission of COVID-19. Sniffy Joe had more deaths from COVID than Trump. In the same amount of time. With vaccine mandates that have destroyed military readiness, created a healthcare worker shortage, and lockdowns that destroyed businesses, more people died in 2021 than in 2020. Roger Williams is accurate that there were more COVID-19 deaths in 2021 than in 2020. U.S. Representative Roger Williams, a Republican from Texas, cited Johns Hopkins data for his claim. Both Johns Hopkins Coronavirus Resource Center data and CDC mortality death certificate data indicate there were more deaths in 2021 than in 2020. 2021 was the year COVID-19 vaccines became widely available to Americans after a grim 2020. While our resistance to the virus has improved with the vaccine, the pandemic persists. On December 2nd, U.S. Representative Roger Williams, Republican Austin, said in an email, according to the latest data from Johns Hopkins University, the number of COVID-19 deaths recorded so far in 2021 has surpassed the total for 2020. He linked this increased level of deaths to President Joe Biden and credited the vaccine development to former President Donald Trump's Operation Warp Speed, a federal agency partnership to accelerate the development and distribution of the vaccine. We also found a December 21st tweet by Williams that said, Americans are worse off under this administration than ever before, citing more COVID deaths under President Biden than President Trump. At the request of a reader, we're fact-checking this claim. Is it true that, despite vaccine availability, more people died from COVID-19 in 2021 than in 2020? The Johns Hopkins dashboard tracks active cases and deaths worldwide. We reached out to Williams' office, 5 emails starting December 6th and 3 phone calls, to confirm the email and ask about the source, but received no answer. However, the original December 2nd newsletter email pointed to the Johns Hopkins Coronavirus Resource Center's global map that tracks active cases, vaccines administered, and deaths worldwide. The dashboard has tracked how the world is faring against COVID-19 since the pandemic's early days. National outlets including USA Today, The New York Times, The Wall Street Journal and Forbes all reported in late November that the number of deaths in 2021 exceeded those in 2020. They used Johns Hopkins data as an up-to-date marker of 2021 deaths and compared that to the CDC's official count of 2020 death certificates. The outlets used the dashboard data instead of data from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention on COVID-19 deaths since CDC data is less frequently updated. Data must be received and processed by the National Center for Health Statistics. CDC data indicates there were 385,443 U.S. deaths attributing COVID-19 as an underlying or contributing cause on death certificates in 2020. By contrast, there were 446,197 U.S. deaths attributed to COVID-19 on death certificates in 2021, as of January 12. A CDC spokesperson wrote in a January 5 email the CDC won't have the final 2021 data for nearly a year, but the death toll will climb as more data comes in for 2021. The spokesperson said it is safe to say the 2021 death toll will remain higher than in 2020. The CDC numbers show there were over 60,000 more deaths in 2021 compared to 2020. So, indeed, the number of COVID-19 deaths in 2021 as reported by the CDC exceeds the number of deaths reported in 2020. For Texas, the CDC counted 47,669 deaths involving COVID-19 in 2021 as of January 12 and 33,542 deaths involving COVID-19 in 2020. Sniffy Joe lie number 9. This isn't so much a lie, as it is a violation of the United States Constitution and a felony. Using federal law enforcement, the FBI to influence an election through social media, i.e. Twitter. The First Amendment provides that Congress make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting its free exercise. It protects freedom of speech, the press, assembly, and the right to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Sniffy Joe lie number 10. Biden says for the last several months wages have gone up more than prices have gone up, which is a complete and total lie. The truth is inflation has outpaced wages 20 months in a row.